So you're officially out of NWA?
Yeah, NWA is no more as far as I'm concerned, you know, unless it's on death row. That's it.
Now, what exactly, happened? Was it just personal differences with a certain member, or?
Yeah, if you're not getting treated right in a place, you're not going to stay there, you know? That's all that was. I guess they didn't respect my talent, you know? So now they're suffering the consequences. Eazy E, you're dropping like a brick, boy. See ya.
Yeah, Dre stays right around the corner from me, but when he sees me, he ducks his head, because he's scared to face me.
So as you can tell by the video title, I'm going to be talking about Eazy E versus Dr. Dre, who really won. But on this episode, it's going to be a little bit different than what you guys are used to. I'm not going to talk about the last portion, which is the war portion of the beef, who won that, for obvious reasons due to Eazy E passing. And this one goes way back to the 90s. I'm going to be talking about how everything started. They initially started out as friends, and then it went sour due to a lot of things. If you're new to the series, this is how we break it down. We first started out with how it started, the origins of the beef, what exactly made it pop off. Then we talk about the major points in the beef in the midst of everything going on, what exactly happened. And then this is where I give my opinion and I talk about what I think about these artists and who actually won everything. I talk about the battle portion, which is the portion in the midst of the battle while everything's going on, who had the better diss tracks, who was the one winning. And then I talk about the war portion, which is after the battle settled down, who's had the better career. Obviously, like I said earlier, for this video, I'm not going to be talking about the war portion due to Eazy E passing. So let's get right into it. Grab a drink, grab some popcorn, sit back and enjoy this new episode. Like most fallouts, the people originally start out as close friends, and that's how Dr. Dre and Eazy E were. They were very close friends who grew up on the same block. Eazy E was the street hustler who was making a lot of money, and Dr. Dre was the music guy who was a DJ for his own crew called the World Class Wrecking Crew. Well, Dr. Dre wasn't happy being in that crew because he didn't have much of a voice when he was there, and he didn't like what they were doing. So he wanted to start his own thing, but he had no money, and that's when Eazy E came into the picture. Since Dr. Dre knew Eazy E very well from growing up with him and knew that Eazy E wanted to get into the music business, it made perfect sense for Dr. Dre to reach out to him. Initially, Dr. Dre had a different rap group in mind when it came to starting his label, but the rap group was from the East Coast and they didn't like the fact that they were rapping West Coast stuff, so they ended up bailing out. So then Dr. Dre needed some artists. He ended up reaching out to Ice Cube to come with him and somehow convinced Eazy E to be the rapper when he initially didn't want to. They recorded the track Boys in the Hood and ended up shopping it around radio stations, and eventually one radio station ended up playing it. However, they needed way more promotion than that and eventually needed a record label to sign them. Eazy E, alongside Dr. Dre and everyone else in the NWA, decided to create a label called Ruthless Records. They initially wanted to split the label between everyone in the group, but that didn't end up happening because they didn't sign official paperwork, and that's when their initial problems started. Dr. Dre, Eazy E, and everyone else agreed that they would get their fair share from the label and get a fair share of money, but this was just all from their words. No official documents were signed, and little did they know at that time that would be the root of their problems.
I don't think the actual business part took place, and I think that's probably what the problem was initially, because initially Drake was supposed to have had a bigger piece of Ruthless, and he was getting, I think he was getting like $20,000 an album. At that time, he thought that was good money, but when he realized he was getting pimped, that's when he left.
Alonzo Williams was the club owner of Eve After Dark, and this club played the group World Class Wrecking Crew, which was a group that Dr. Dre was involved with. And this group ended up signing with Jerry Heller to a different record label called Macola Records. And because Jerry Heller got them a record deal at Macola, Eazy-E noticed that, and Eazy-E wanted to set up a meeting with Jerry Heller, but Jerry Heller wasn't going to do it until Alonzo Williams said, hey, if you pay me $700, I can set up a meeting with you and Jerry Heller, and you guys can talk business and you can promote your music. That meeting did happen, and Jerry Heller liked what he heard, and that's when officially Jerry Heller came into the picture. And with Jerry Heller, it wasn't just about talk, it was about serious business. So this is when he officially presented business paperwork to Eazy-E and everyone else. But according to a few NWA members, this wasn't the clear case in what exactly happened, and that Jerry Heller and Eazy-E were working together and split Ruthless Records 50-50 between them two and not between the 4 NWA members that originally were supposed to be in the group, like Alonzo says. The first member to question what was going on with the paperwork and money and residuals that were coming in from their performances after releasing a couple of projects was Arabian Prince. He was the 6th member of the group that people didn't really focus on, but he says when they first started touring with NWA, he didn't see any money and he kept having to ask Eazy-E or Jerry Heller for money, and he ended up not getting anything. So after performing a couple times with NWA, he just ended up leaving the group completely and decided to go solo. Ice Cube then noticed what Arabian Prince did and followed in his footsteps and did the same thing and started asking where is his cut of the money after all the performances and all of the albums sold. What prompted Ice Cube to leave was when Jerry Heller officially came to everybody with $75,000 checks and contracts. According to Ice Cube, he stated that Jerry Heller said that if they didn't sign those contracts, they wouldn't get their residual checks or concert money that they were owed. Ice Cube's stance was that he was already owed that $75,000 and more, but instead he ended up dipping out and leaving the group, and everyone else in the group that was around, from Dr. Dre to Eazy-E to DJ Ren and Yella, ended up signing those contracts, and NWA officially became a group legally. The rumored deal that Dr. Dre signed, according to Alonzo, was that he was set to get paid $20,000 per album, and it was a 5-album deal, which meant $100,000.
Was it true that Eazy-E was only paying Dr. Dre $20,000 an album?
Rumor has it, I never saw the contract, but they gave him $100,000 to do 5 albums, which is the same thing. But it all depends on how you put the package on it. I'm gonna give you $100,000. That's like a lot of goddamn money. Okay, that sounds like a lot of money. Because we got 100,000, record crew got 100,000 to go to CBS for 1 album. So, but Dre wasn't in a part of the business, but he wasn't part of the business aspect of it. So he didn't know that. So when somebody tell him, I'm gonna give you 100,000 to make some beats, he was broke. He was broke. He was in debt to child support the whole 9 yards.
And at that time for Dr. Dre, that was a huge amount of money. He had never seen that amount, so he was happy with getting that. When Ice Cube left, that's when the group started to slowly fall apart. After the huge success of NWA's first album, Straight Outta Compton, and it doing over 3 million copies just in a couple of months, Dr. Dre thought that his lifestyle would change a lot, because when you sell that many albums and do that many tours, you're expecting something big, but nothing really changed for Dr. Dre. So then he started asking his own questions about how much is he getting paid, and is he getting paid the fair amount? And before the second album from NWA came out, Dr. Dre was asking his own questions, but never got a direct answer from either Jerry Heller or Eazy-E. The DOC was a person that was brought into the NWA group to write for Eazy-E and various other artists amongst the group, and he was his own artist. After releasing his debut album, 5 months later, he suffered an accident that would forever change his life. He ended up losing his voice in that accident and no longer could rap, so he ended up writing a lot more for a lot of other artists. He also had a bodyguard by the name of Suge Knight, and they were close friends. After this accident happened, Suge Knight had suggested, hey, let's go over your contract and let's see if you can make more money writing for other artists. Suge Knight saw the contract and saw that he was getting screwed out of a lot of money and royalties. So naturally, he decided to help the DOC out. And while he was doing that, Dr. Dre took notice and decided to jump in as well and have Suge Knight negotiate his contract too.
Doc, the DOC was a friend of mine.
Right.
And the guy had, he had a tragic, it was an accident. He was going home from one of his videos, he fell asleep. He was in a Honda Prelude, he got blew out the brake in the windshield of the car from the back.
Right.
Everything else came back except his voice. So the guy ended up talking like Donald Duck, which is very sad. The guy went from having the best voice in the rap game to having basically no voice.
Right.
I tried to cheer him up because, it was like the worst thing a prophecy can happen to a rapper, like an athlete loses his legs.
Right.
So I said, well, look, one thing you can count on that you write songs.
Right.
You done wrote X amount of songs for Eazy. You done wrote X amount of songs for NWA. That's worth a lot of money to you.
Right. And so you get Dre, you got Doc.
So I go into Doc's contract, and he sold his songs for $100 watch, $150 chain. So when I never seen anything like it in the world.
Right.
So when I went to go get Doc's situation squared away, that's when Dre came.
Right.
Dre said, well, look, I'm not really from Compton. Everybody used you against me. He said, I'm over here at Ruthless, and I got this deal that for a bonus, if I do 2 records, I'll probably get a swimming pool in my backyard.
Right.
I said, that's gotta be crazy. What your contract says? He said, I never seen a contract.
Right.
I signed something, I never seen it. I said, we gotta get your contracts. So they gave him a runaround, told me he couldn't have his contract. The lawyers told me he couldn't have his contract, but the lawyers was a record company lawyer.
Right.
So I went to the lawyer, I went to the record company, I said, okay, you gotta give Dre his contract. Actually gotta give it to me. So after I got his contract, I read and I seen that the guy was only getting 1 point, 2 points, and it was cross-collateralizing everything.
Right.
Even though he was a producer, along with Yellow, if JJ Fad go in the hole,
right,
he gotta pay for it.
Right.
So it's no way, if he produced and worked for 20 years, he wouldn't have never seen any money. He was always been recouped.
Dre says that he stepped to Eazy E and asked him either to choose him or Jerry Heller. Eazy E ultimately decided to side with Jerry Heller on this situation, so Dr. Dre said, I'm out.
I actually stepped to Eric and I said, look, man, it's either me or him. One of us got to go, It's like if he goes, we can continue doing what we got to do. He chose to keep the manager, so I had to leave.
But Eazy E said, you can't just leave because you're contractually obligated to stay with me and finish a certain amount of albums before you can leave. Well, Dr. Dre wasn't happy with that, so he decided to bring in Suge Knight to take things to the next level and hopefully get him out of his contract. On April 23rd, 1991, Dr. Dre gave Eazy E a call to have a meeting at a studio in Hollywood to discuss his contract and hopefully resolve things. Eazy E agreed to show up, but when he did show up that day, it wasn't Dr. Dre that was there, it was Suge Knight and a bunch of his goons. They allegedly ended up forcing Eazy E to sign the contract by threatening his family's lives and threatening the life of Jerry Heller. There were rumors that Eazy E also got beat up during this incident, but everyone that was around Eazy E denied this, and everyone said that if Eazy E actually got beat up, he would have actually done something to Suge Knight and Dr. Dre, but that was never the case. It was just rumors.
So Suge is trying to form this record label. He gets into contact with Eazy E, but Eazy E doesn't want to just let his artist go. But ultimately, some situations happen, and he gets a release for Dr. Dre and Michelle A.
See, that I watched that movie and stuff like that. I don't think that shit true because Eazy-E had the whole Alondra behind him. And Alondra a little bit was harder than Lil Rosecrans back then. You know what I'm saying? He had the Atlantic Drives, the Kelly Park, End Hoods, Southside, Spook Town, just name it.
Okay.
Acacia, the whole Alondra was behind him. So we ain't gonna let no red rags do Eazy-E like that. You know what I'm saying? So that was, I think that was a fucked up shit.
Yeah, I heard Eazy never got beat up.
Nah, hell no.
Suge Knight, of course, denies all this and says that he was just business savvy and managed to get Dre out of that situation. And after this situation is when the official beef between Dr. Dre and Eazy E started. All these things were happening behind the scenes, though. The general public had no idea that Dr. Dre wanted to leave NWA, because just a month later, on May 28th, 1991, NWA dropped their second album, N-Words for Life, and the album debuted at #1, which was a huge success, but this would be the last time that we would ever get an NWA album. Dr. Dre, the DOC, and Suge Knight decided to form their own label finally, now that Dr. Dre was out of his contract and the DOC was out of his contract. Dr. Dre initially wanted to name the new label Future Shock Records. Ultimately, they decided to go with Death Row Records. The DOC recommended that, and Suge Knight liked that a lot more. They formed the paperwork, the LLCs, and got everything in line. However, everything wasn't smooth sailing. Dr. Dre ended up running into a lot of legal problems and a lot of personal problems. On the Source magazine of November 1992, where Dr. Dre was on the cover, he talked about a lot of these incidents and cleared the air. One of the incidents was the Dean Barnes assault that Dr. Dre did on her. Dee Barnes was the host of Fox's TV show Pump It Up. They aired an interview with Ice Cube dissing NWA. Dr. Dre took that personally and allegedly approached her in an LA nightclub and put hands on her. And of course, he got sued for well over $22.7 million in punitive damages.
Barnes seeks damages of over $10 million and claims that last January at a Los Angeles club, Dre assaulted her, grabbing her hair, slamming her face and body into a wall, and kicking her in the ribs. Barnes' attorneys say that Dre was apparently upset that one of Barnes' producers inserted her interview with ex-NWA member Ice Cube into a Pump It Up show last winter featuring NWA. The group and Ice Cube have become mortal enemies since he left NWA 2 years ago. NWA's independent publicist Norman Winters says, quote, "I know Dr. Dre is a gentle soul, the loving father of a baby boy. I can't imagine him treating any lady in anything but a gentlemanly fashion." No comment from NWA's label, but when we interviewed NWA last March, the group was quite willing to comment on the Barnes incident.
That's what she get. I hope she get it again. She got beat down. The host of that show did something and she know what she did and got beat down, and I hope it happened again. See you around, buddy boy.
And Dr. Dre was arrested at a music industry convention in New Orleans after allegedly participating in a melee that left a 15-year-old fan stabbed and 4 police officers injured. Along the way of those two things happening, Dr. Dre ended up in a car accident that left his car completely totaled, and he was accused of burning down his own home. Plus, on July 18th, 1992, it was reported by MTV News that following a dispute at a hotel, Dr. Dre was shot 4 times in the leg. And while going through all of these other things, Eazy-E decided to sue Dr. Dre for allegedly forging his signature and using extortion. AP News in October of 1992 wrote this article saying, Eric Wright, known to rap fans as Eazy-E, is using a federal racketeering law to sue Sony Music Entertainment, accusing the company of money laundering, extortion, and conspiracy. Wright, founder of NWA and the Ruthless Records label, claims in the lawsuit that Sony band member Andre Young, who's Dr. Dre, and others conspired to use force and threats to break recording contracts with Ruthless. The lawsuit, which seeks $54 million in damages, was filed Wednesday in U.S. District Court in Los Angeles. This lawsuit came about after Dr. Dre released a track called Deep Cover featuring Snoop Dogg. This track was on the Deep Cover film, and after this came out without the permission of Eazy-E and Ruthless Records, that's when the lawsuit came about, and that's when public problems between Eazy-E and Dr. Dre were known. In the midst of all these lawsuits and problems that Dr. Dre was having, he was recording his debut album, The Chronic, but when he was shopping it to labels, nobody wanted to deal with the problems of Dr. Dre and all the lawsuits he had surrounding him and all the bad publicity. The only person that was willing to deal with all these lawsuits and bad publicity was Jimmy Iovine from Interscope Records. He heard The Chronic, loved it, and thought it's going to change hip-hop forever, but he had to take on all the lawsuits that came with Dr. Dre. He ended up talking to Eazy E and Jerry Heller from Ruthless Records. He ended up getting them to drop the lawsuit and got Dr. Dre out of his Ruthless Records deal legally, but it came with a price through negotiation. Eazy-E and Jerry Heller knew the talents of Dr. Dre, so they weren't going to let Dr. Dre just get out easily. So they had to come up with an agreement that both parties would agree with. The agreement was that Dr. Dre can leave Ruthless Records and sign with Jimmy Iovine over at Interscope Records and start his new label, Death Row. The catch was that Dr. Dre would have to give up 20% of everything that he made for the next 6 years over at Interscope Records. Jimmy Iovine agreed to this, Dr. Dre agreed to this, and the deal was done.
I had no idea that you make money off product from Dr. Dre and Snoop. Now, how did that work out?
Basically, I had Dre signed as exclusive producer and exclusive artist. So when Dre tried to make his deal over at Interscope, you know, I was included for the next 6 years. So you can say all you want to say. Basically, you could diss me all you want, but I'm gonna get paid. 'Cause that's why I say Dre Day is only Eazy's payday. And that's real.
Now that the paperwork was finally right, Dr. Dre released his solo debut album, The Chronic, on December 15th, 1992. And with the release, Dr. Dre had a lot to say. Immediately on the intro track of The Chronic, he sends shots directly at Jerry Heller and Eazy-E. But the person that mainly talks in the intro is Snoop Dogg, who at the time nobody knew. And this would mark the first on-wax diss towards Eazy-E. After that intro immediately follows the diss track towards Eazy-E and Jerry Heller, which was titled Fuck with Dre Day. The album started out dissing Eazy-E, and it ended dissing Eazy-E on the track called Bitches Ain't Shit as well.
You must have thought I was sleazy. I thought I was a mark, cause I used to hang with Eazy. I used to know a bitch named Merrick Wright. We used to roll around and the house at night. Long as my mother pockets was fat, I didn't give a where the bitch was at, but she was hanging with a white, doing shit she do, sucking on his just to get a buck or two.
But the most notable track was obviously Fuck with Dre Day. And this track was not only taking shots at Eazy-E and Jerry Heller, it also sent shots at Luther Campbell and Tim Dog, and even some subliminal shots at Ice Cube. But when the music video came out, it was clear it was more directly at Eazy-E and Jerry Heller, because throughout the music video, there's an actor that's dressed up like Eazy-E and somebody else that pretends to be Jerry Heller. And the video depicts Eazy-E as Sleazy E, and he's sort of like a slave to Jerry Heller. And they call Ruthless Records in the video Useless Records. And this diss track was a huge success. It ended up peaking at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100. So clearly everyone heard this diss track. And what most people don't know is that Dr. Dre released 2 diss tracks at once. It wasn't just Dre Day. It was another track called Puffin' on Blunts and Drankin' Tanqueray, featuring the Lady of Rage and the Dog Pound. This track went under the radar and was never featured on Dr. Dre's The Chronic album. In the intro, Dr. Dre is talking and he disses Eazy-E, Tim, and Luke. But on the official release of this track, that part is cleared out, so nobody really knows that he was actually dissing them.
You's a punk ass. Yo, yeah. Yo, Jeff Froze in the motherfucking house. Yo, that Eazy-E, you's a punk.
And all eyes were now on Eazy-E and what he was going to do next. The music video for Fuck with Dre Day was aimed at Eazy-E and Jerry Heller instead of Tim Dog and Luther Campbell. So once Eazy-E saw the music video, he got in the studio and decided to record his response to everything. And at this time, Dr. Dre was having huge success after he had left Ruthless Records with Death Row Records and Suge Knight, and Snoop Dogg was blowing up. So a lot of people were wondering if Eazy-E can maintain his success by himself. Eazy-E was looking to expand Ruthless Records and found some local Compton rappers by the name of Dresta and BG Knockout. Dresta says the first night he started recording with Eazy E, Eazy was working on a diss track towards Dr. Dre, but the track wasn't that good and Dresta came up with something even better, which would eventually become Real Motherfucking G's. The next day, BG Knockout ended up joining and added his verse in. Dresta wrote all of Eazy-E's verse. They loved the track, ended up shooting the music video in August of 1993. When they shot the music video, the track wasn't released yet. So then word came out that Eazy-E was preparing a response to Dr. Dre. And the music video for Eazy-E's Real Motherfucking G's was a response to Dr. Dre's video. AJ Johnson was the one who pretended to be Eazy-E in Dr. Dre's video, and they called him Sleazy E. Well, Eazy-E responded to that by hiring AJ Johnson to be Sleazy E in his own music video. And in the video, they end up chasing the fake Eazy-E and running into him and chasing him down, beating him up, stuff like that. AJ Johnson, though, couldn't finish the full video. The first day they shot the video, AJ Johnson got to shoot a couple of his parts pretending to be the fake Eazy-E. But when the second day came to shoot the music video, AJ Johnson never showed up. What ended up happening, AJ Johnson says, was that Suge Knight called him to his office. AJ Johnson showed up, and he says allegedly Suge Knight threatened him with a gun and said that you cannot continue finishing the video for Eazy-E. So AJ Johnson called Eazy-E and said, you guys need a replacement. I can't do the video anymore because Suge Knight threatened me. Regardless, the video was finished with a replacement in the second half of the music video.
Dr. Dre put me in his video as Sleazy E, and I ran into him at the Comedy Store.
Okay.
And he said, man, I'm doing this video. I want you to play Eazy-E in it. And I'm like, cool, no problem. So, and then I did the video. I guess Eazy seen it. So, Eazy called me. He like, man, you know everybody thought that was me in the video.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He like, man, you got to do my video to show people that wasn't me.
Real Compton City G's.
I'm like, no problem. So I do Eazy video. We just done half of Eazy video. Like, we done one day of it. So I had to go back tomorrow to finish it. But Suge called me into the office. You know what I mean? You can't do it. I'm like, what you mean I can't do it? He already paid me. Suge pulled a gun out. Pow. I said, you can't do it. I won't do it.
Then in late August 1993, the video officially premieres alongside the track. And in this track, Eazy-E, Dresta, and BG Knockout are calling out Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and saying they're not authentic. Eazy-E mentions Dr. Dre and calls him out on his credibility as a gangsta and says that he was with the Wrecking Crew and he wore makeup. He never did the street shit that he raps about throughout the whole track.
Hey yo, doctor, here's another proper track and it's fat. Watch the sniper, time to pay the paper. Damn, E, they tried to fade you on Dre Day, but Dre Day only meant Eazy's payday.
And this track had a huge impact as well. It peaked at number 42 on the Billboard Hot 100. After this track came out, Suge put out a message that he wanted to slap BG Knockout and Dresta. The funny thing is, right after he said that, he actually ran into them. MC Ren ended up performing at the Grand Slam. BG Knockout and Dresta went there to that performance. What ended up happening, though, is that Suge Knight came as well alongside Dr. Dre. And while they were there, Dresta and BG Knockout decided to confront Suge Knight about what he said. Suge Knight ended up playing it off and said that, hey, I know Eazy-E isn't paying you guys right. Let me sign you guys over to death row. Ultimately, Dresta and BG Knockout never ended up doing that because they were loyal to Eazy-E.
This is an MC Ren performance in Death Row and came in, and Real Compton City G just started hitting the box, right? So now Death Row done walked in there with their entourage, right? So I said, man, where they at? He said, oh, they over by the bar, man. I said, we gonna walk, man. I started walking. I look behind me. All these dudes is walking behind me now. The same dudes that was running, half of them is walking behind me now. They go see what's gonna happen. And all it was, oh, Trey, what's up, my nigga? You know, man, some of my little homies know you. I was in YA together. You know what I mean? Well, holler at me, man. I know he ain't paying y'all right, man. I know you ain't doing right business. You know, it was some Compton shit like that. You know what I'm saying? And that's
okay.
It, man.
But you guys always stayed loyal to Eazy.
Yeah. Eazy-E and his new crew ended up going on a promo run for this track and appeared on various TV shows, basically dissing Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and anyone over at Death Row Records, calling them fake studio gangsters.
But there's talk about everybody coming back together. What's the deal, Easy?
Basically, everybody is going to be me, Ren, Ice Cube, and Yella, because we stay in Sucker Free in 93, so we don't deal with Dre. Because you know where he came from, world-class wrecking crew, so it's like that now, you know. We stay in Sucker Free in 93.
So you mean it's static with you and Dre?
What? Dre ain't got no love.
No love?
No love whatsoever.
Dr. Dre? Yeah. That was, you remember that group, the World Class Wrecking Crew? Yeah. That wore lipstick, stick lace, biker shorts, and, you know, ruffles, eyeliner.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, if you go look back like to his old albums before where he did songs like The Cabbage Patch, The Fly, He's Bionic, Dr. Dre, and you look back at him in his doctor suit, you could tell where he originally came from. See, if you look back at me, you could, well, my beginning, I did the Boys in the Hood. So I was cruising down the street in my 6'4". So it's 93 now, and Dre is all of a sudden cruising down the street in his 6'4" now. So I figured he like a 93 wannabe. Because back then, he did all this Cabbage Patch stuff and dancing and wore the lipstick and the doctor outfits with the stethoscope and did all this techno music. He was never really from the streets. And I figured, like, what he talking about? He said he's got a song I call G Thing. I figured G stuff come from the concrete, and that's the streets, which he was never from the streets. Only reason why people affiliate him with the streets is through me.
While on this promo run, he finally got ready to release his new EP. And on October 19th, 1993, he dropped a new EP called It's On, Dr. Dre 187 Killa. Although Dr. Dre was in the title of the project, the whole project wasn't about just Dr. Dre. The intro track, Extra Special Thanks, has mentions of Dr. Dre, Real Compton City G's, of course. Still, That Hitta has mentions, It's On, and Down to the Last Roach. Those are the records that actually mentioned Dr. Dre and took shots at Death Row Records, and the project eventually ended up going double platinum within a year, so it succeeded very well beyond expectations.
Wanna diss them and they whole crew. In fact, thank you for stacking a nigga's bank up.
Since Dr. Dre was more of a producer than a rapper, he ended up producing a lot of the future diss tracks towards Ruthless Records. And since a lot of other people and other artists that were signed to each label got involved, it started turning into a crew versus crew thing instead of a Dr. Dre versus Eazy E thing. The first response to Eazy E's diss EP was from Snoop Dogg. He ended up releasing his album in November of 1993. This was his debut album, Doggy Style, and it completely blew up. It was the biggest debut hip-hop album from a hip-hop artist at that time. So imagine the huge buzz whenever Snoop Dogg did anything. He ended up appearing on Arsenio Hall, and while he was there, he spit a freestyle going at Eazy-E.
You can't see me, you wanna be me. I got a message to the CPT. What's up, Eazy? I'm getting kinda greasy with curl on your neck. You can't see that dog cause I'm out to chin check.
After this, quite some time passed and nobody really said anything. Eazy-E was focused more on his business, and in early 1994, he ended up launching with the Beat 92, his own radio show called The Ruthless Radio Show. And he kept it professional for the most part, but there would be times where he would take slight jabs at Dr. Dre and Death Row and Snoop Dogg and call them studio gangsters. And to add more fuel to the fire, Eazy-E premiered a new diss track from his Ruthless Records artists, Cocaine and Cold 187. The track was called Don't Bite the Funk, and it was taking shots at Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, the Dog Pound, and basically everyone at Death Row. The track was claiming that Dr. Dre stole the whole funk sound from Cold 187 and Cocaine.
When I first came to Ruthless, I was living like a hustler, but see you was living straight like a buster. I used to think you was the truth, till I remembered you was in the motherfucking wrecking crew. And then I looked at I know album cover, it was you, chillin' looking as a motherfucker.
And of course, people over at Death Row didn't like this. What ended up happening was Snoop Dogg's crew, the Dog Pound, alongside the DOC and Michelle, ended up calling into Eazy-E's Ruthless radio show, and they had a full-on argument live on radio.
Dad, all y'all know what's up, man. You know what's not real. When you can sell 1 million records, you come talk to me. Who? You. Dad, you talking to the wrong fool. You talk to the wrong fool. Nigga, I just sold more records than you than ever. Okay, did you get paid for it? I bet you ain't seen $1 million. You ain't seen $1 million, so that's letting you know you don't even make 25 cents a record.
After this argument, things went on wax once again. And in August of 1994, Snoop Dogg's crew, the Dog Pound, released a new track on a soundtrack called Natural Born Killers. The track was called What Would You Do? And it even featured Snoop Dogg, and they shot a music video for the track, taking shots at BG Knockout, Dresta, Eazy-E, and anyone else over at Ruthless.
And the question is asked, do you want to rap, scrap, or blast? Cause then ass, I'll be the first one to hit him. Oh yeah, fuck BG Knockout and every
Everyone that was around Eazy-E said that Eazy-E didn't really care much for this beef. He really had no issues with Dr. Dre. He was mainly hurt that Dr. Dre left him and then decided to diss him. Other than that, Eazy-E looked at this as an opportunity to create more controversy, which then would translate to more money. Because Eazy-E owned 20% of Dr. Dre's The Chronic, he didn't mind playing The Chronic's album on his Ruthless radio show. He in fact actually really liked The Chronic album besides the track Dre Day, because obviously it was dissing him. But he kept playing those tracks on his radio show, and Suge Knight did not like that at all. He actually ended up threatening a lot of the employees there at the radio show and said if they kept playing Death Row's music that he would show up and harm them. But Eazy-E heard that and basically laughed it off, and then one Saturday night he just kept playing Death Row music back to back to back.
He said, yeah man, I don't care about none of that shit, I get paid for that shit, homie. Play that shit. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I would play Death Row stuff in between, you know? So I guess Suge Knight during the week, he came up to the beat and he was upset. Like they were scared of him too. So he came in and told them, man, tell Eazy don't be playing none of my music. And they got all scared, man. They called us up and they were like, we gotta have a meeting and security needs to be beefed up. It was a real trippy thing for them. And they were like, I remember Eazy, they told Eazy, Eric, Suge Knight came and he said that he don't want you playing none of his music anymore and we don't want no problems with him. He's like, man, fuck Suge Knight. I don't give a fuck. Julio, this Saturday, play all that shit.
After this, Eazy-E in November of 1994 dropped a new diss track, and this was a playoff of the Dog Pound What Would You Do diss track. And his track was also titled What Would You Do, and it was featuring Dirty Red. And on this track, he's going the most aggressively at Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Dog Pound, and everyone at Death Row. Following this, just a month later on December 7th, 1994, would be the 1994 Billboard Music Awards. And this would be the first time all the members of Death Row Records and all the members of Ruthless Records would run into each other. BG Knockout ended up detailing the situation. He said that they appeared at the award show because they were nominated for an award, as well as artists from Death Row such as Snoop Dogg. They ended up seeing all of Death Row members at the award show in front of a couple of rows, and then they had an altercation, but ultimately it was stopped. And then after the award show is when things really got heated. BG Knockout and Dresta noticed that Suge Knight had approached Eazy-E, and he was doing it in a very aggressive manner. So BG Knockout and Dresta ended up approaching Suge Knight, and then all the members from each group ended up coming in one area, exchanging words, started getting aggressive, but then an OG Crip member ended up breaking things off and said this is not the night to do it. However, BG Knockout says that one of his homies went to Compton that night and retrieved about 7 guns and brought them back just in case things were going to pop off.
So after the award ceremony, we had 2 homies with us. They came back to the hood, they brought straps for everybody, so we went outside, everybody was strapped up. So we got outside, we like, Suge, what's happening? Like, I thought you was gonna do something when we get outside. He was like, man, I ain't tripping on that shit.
Keefy D and many others stated that Suge Knight was very cautious about putting his hands on Eazy-E because Eazy-E at that time had the whole backing of the Crips in Compton. So if Suge Knight were to do something like put his hands on him or do something very violent to Eazy-E or somebody from his family, things would get very ugly with all the Crips going against Suge Knight. After this, things had seemingly died down with the diss tracks. In early 1995, Eazy-E was actually trying to get NWA back because he knew it would be a huge financial gain for everybody and it would be great for hip-hop. He actually ended up running into Ice Cube in New York in early 1995. They hatched out anything that they had and they didn't have beef anymore. So now it was time for Eazy-E and Dr. Dre to come together. Even though Dr. Dre was having huge success with Death Row Records, he was even interested in having NWA come back. And Ruthless Records was doing very well. Eazy-E ended up finding a group by the name of Bone Thugs and Harmony and started working on their debut album and mentioned that they would be the next biggest thing. However, the reunion with NWA and Eazy-E seeing the huge success of Bone Thugs and Harmony would never end up happening because on February 16th, 1995, Eazy-E was having a lot of breathing problems. Eazy-E had bronchitis, so the people around him, whenever he would have breathing problems, would just take him to the hospital and he would have to stay overnight and then he would come back the next day perfectly fine. The night after February 16th, 1995, BG Knockout says that Eazy-E came to the studio immediately after the hospital to record a new diss track towards the Dog Pound. However, after about 2 hours later, Eazy-E never came back in the studio, and when BG Knockout came outside to go check on him, he was having trouble breathing. But this time he didn't stay overnight, he actually ended up staying for 2 weeks.
When he was in there for that first time, he came straight from the hospital to the studio with me. I know they kept him overnight. He didn't tell me it was 3 days though, but he just said overnight. So he felt better. He came to the studio, and in about an hour and a half time of him being in the studio, his lungs collapsed. And then he was admitted back. That's when I told the bodyguards, you know, his breathing wasn't cool, to come and grab him. And they took him and put him in a car and drove him to the hospital.
And then on March 1st, 1995, news leaked from the nurses in that hospital that Eazy-E has AIDS. 2 weeks later, on March 16th, Eazy-E issued a statement through his lawyer. This would be the last public thing that we know of where Eazy-E spoke and actually said something, not from himself, but from somebody else.
A hardcore rapper who celebrates sex, crime, and violence in his music is in a hospital tonight with AIDS. He says he has no idea how he got the fatal disease.
Tonight, the 31-year-old rap artist is hospitalized in Los Angeles in critical condition. He was admitted 3 weeks ago complaining of breathing problems, apparently unaware he had been infected with the AIDS virus. Wright issued a statement through his attorney.
I would like to turn my own problem into something good that will reach out to all my homeboys.
Then on March 26th, 1995, at the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, it was officially announced that Eazy-E had passed away due to AIDS.
Rap singer Eazy-E has lost his battle with AIDS just 10 days after revealing that he had the disease. The 31-year-old rapper died last night in a Los Angeles hospital. He was hospitalized last month for what he thought was asthma and said that he did not know how he contracted AIDS.
That was the official report, but everyone around him speculated that it was something deeper than that. And to this day, his family and friends speculate that someone actually murdered him and that he didn't die from AIDS because of how quickly he passed away from it, and from various other things, such as the alleged statement wasn't written in his handwriting. He couldn't talk or speak at that time, so it was impossible for him to say anything or have anyone write anything for him. And on his death certificate, according to BG Knockout, it says that he died of cardiac arrest, with no mention of AIDS in that death certificate at all. Plus, there were other speculations of people wanting the record label, Ruthless, his wife potentially, all these other things. Nobody really knows exactly what happened. It's not as simple as black and white because there are a lot of pieces missing and things just don't seem to add up.
That's not true though. Who wrote it? See what I'm saying? How can you write a statement when you have a whole respirator pumping your lungs and shit? That's what I'm trying to tell you, yo. It's like, come on. Like, this, you know, like those people, that lawyer is complicit in this case. That lady is complicit in this case. and some other people, yo. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, who knows? Wasn't nobody there, bro, to really know for sure. We know he couldn't write. He didn't sign the marriage certificate. We know that. His name is typed on it. His death certificate say cardiac arrest also. So why they not saying he died from cardiac arrest? See what I'm saying?
Well,
it don't say cardiac arrest due to a complications with the AIDS virus. It just says cardiac arrest.
While Eazy-E was sick, Dr. Dre actually ended up visiting him. He said he couldn't talk to Eazy-E because he had tubes down his throat and he was unconscious. But Dr. Dre says that he whispered quite a few things in his ear and that he regrets that they even had a beef and that they were best friends and should have kept it that way, so on and so forth. So officially, the battle between Dr. Dre and Eazy-E ended, but amongst the crews, it kept going.
I was so fortunate to be able to get on the phone with him and talk about maybe putting the NWA back together, and we chopped it up about old times and what have you, and maybe not even 2 weeks after that, he was in the hospital.
Really though?
Yeah, so the last time I actually saw him, he didn't know I was in the room. He was on life support, you know? So I just reached down and whispered a few words in his ear, and I think maybe the next day or two, he passed away.
But you guys had a chance to just talk as brothers.
Yes, we got a chance to rekindle it, and like I said, actually talk about getting in the studio again.
Despite Eazy-E passing, Bone Thugs and Harmony was still scheduled to release their second studio album, which was called E1999 Eternal. The album was released on July 25th, 1995, and the album featured 2 tracks taking aim at the Dog Pound and Death Row. The first track was Mo Murder, and the second track was Shots to the Double Glock. In that same month of July 1995, there was an artist by the name of Montel Jordan shooting the music video for his track called Something for the Honeys. What ended up happening, though, was Death Row artists Nate Dogg, Corrupt, Snoop Dogg, everyone started coming to the video shoot alongside BG Knockout and Dresta, because at that time they ended up being on the same label under Def Jam. So when they ran into each other, Nate Dogg was the one who had a main problem with BG Knockout and Dresta, and a fight broke out at the golf course.
Eazy-E boys, they was just, I mean, me and Ricky Harris was riding around, you know, in a little go-kart thing, getting ready to shoot a scene, and they just walked up on me like, fuck the Dog Pound, you know what I mean? And my response is like, I mean, I'm not, it's about 100 people around there, and one of them went behind me, so I'm like, well, either I swing now, or else I just get swung on, so then it all jumped off.
No choice but to swing.
So
and
once
bing,
I swung,
bing,
then
bing.
it just got hectic, because then I was fighting 2 to 3 people, and then somebody hit me in the back of the head and all. I mean, it actually was some unnecessary bullshit.
And this would be the last time that anyone from Death Row or Ruthless actually ran into each other and had problems with each other. As time went on, they sort of settled their beef, and they really had no personal problems amongst each other. The following month, on August 15th of 1995, BG Knockout and Dresta dropped their debut album, Real Brothers. And on the last track on the album, called DPG Killa, they end up dissing Corrupt and Nate Dogg and Daz.
Corrupt, Nate and Daz, I'ma fuck 'em. Matter of fact, tells that whole pound I say fuck 'em.
Then on October 31st, 1995, Dog Pound released their debut album, Dog Food, and they had a diss track called Dog Pound Gangstas, going at Bone Thugs and Harmony, BG Knockout, and Dresta. And there is speculation still to this day that on this album, there was supposed to be a track called Pussies for Easy, where it's dissing BG Knockout, Dresta, Bone Thugs and Harmony, and even Eazy-E. But since Eazy-E had passed, they decided to remove that off the album because they probably felt it was too disrespectful. However, that rumor has never been confirmed by Daz, Corrupt, or anyone over at Death Row.
Ain't no harm in me, ain't got no love for no hoes in harmony. It's easy to find them C's to execute, chances of survival too small to compute.
One final diss track would come out, and it would be on Eazy-E's posthumous album released by Ruthless Records, which dropped on January 30th, 1996. The album was called Straight Off the Streets of Motherfucking Compton, and it featured a new diss track, which was the #2 track called Old School Shit, dissing Dr. Dre and everyone over at Death Row.
Wanna be like me, be a G like me, but I'm the made a G out of the D-R-E-Z-O.
And And that was the final diss track. After that, everyone stopped releasing diss tracks. Everyone eventually just moved on. They ended their beefs, but there was one last thing that Dr. Dre had to say about Eazy E, and it was on Dr. Dre's The Chronic 2001. The album was released on November 16th, 1999, and on track number 7 called What's the Difference, Dr. Dre decides to pay homage to his close friend, Eazy E.
And Easy, I'm still with you. Fuck the beef, I miss you, and that's just being real with you.
That's it for the facts on the timeline of what happened to Dr. Dre versus Eazy E. Now let's talk about my opinion side of things, where I talk about who won the battle and who won the war. Obviously, once again, for this video, I'm not going to do the war portion because Eazy E passed away. But of course, I'm going to talk about who won the battle portion, and this is strictly my opinion. In the battle portion, these are the tracks that I'm going to measure up against each other. Only the Eazy-E and Dr. Dre tracks. None of the tracks that were released by other artists amongst the groups am I going to be talking about. So on Eazy-E's end, I'm talking about Real Compton City G's, It's On, Still a Hitter, Down to the Last Roach, What Would You Do, and Old School Shit. Those are the tracks that I'm talking about when it comes to Eazy-E's end. On Dr. Dre's end, I'm talking about Fuck with Dre Day, The Chronic Intro, Bitches Ain't Shit. Based off these tracks, I give the battle portion winner to Eazy-E. And here's why. Eazy-E's diss track, Real Compton City G's, has one line on it that forever shifted this battle and to me made Eazy-E the winner automatically. Usually when an artist releases a diss track, you want to have those one-line hitters that kind of make everybody say ooh and go crazy, and you usually want that one line to be backed up with a fact. Now, we know Eazy-E was clowning Dr. Dre for not being a real G, but the line for me that did it was when Eazy-E said, Dre Day makes Eazy's payday. Because that was a fact, and Dr. Dre, everything that Dr. Dre released after he was out of Ruthless, he had to give up 20% of that for the next 6 years. Which, if you look at it, then if you tie everything back together, everything on the Chronic that was dissing Eazy-E, Eazy-E is getting paid for. So to Eazy-E, it never really mattered that Dr. Dre was dissing him. He actually enjoyed it. That's why he never took anything personal and was actually looking to hash things out and do tracks with Dr. Dre. On top of that, you have to remember, Eazy-E wasn't really an artist. He wasn't a rapper. Dr. Dre kind of influenced him to do that. Now, a lot of people can say, well, Dr. Dre really wasn't an artist too. He's more of a producer. Still, Dr. Dre still had more knowledge in music and was more well-rounded than Eazy-E was. So for Eazy-E to flip that on Dr. Dre and say that, look, I'm getting paid off all the shit you're talking about and I'm still making money from my label. I mean, he ended up signing Bone Thugs and Harmony, which ended up doing insane numbers. On top of that, he knew, how to manipulate the music business. He was very smart in that. And I truly believe if Eazy-E was still alive, he would have been just as big as Dr. Dre, if not bigger. Now, I have to give it to Dr. Dre that in the battle, Dr. Dre was commercially a lot bigger. The Chronic ended up shifting hip-hop, and, Snoop Dogg just blew up like crazy, and then there was Tupac, and Death Row was just the biggest thing ever. So yeah, commercially maybe Dr. Dre was bigger, but in terms of diss tracks and just how the energy was at that time, Eazy-E was literally the biggest thing on the planet. Everyone was showing him respect, and everyone loved the Real Compton City G's diss track. On top of that, personally, I really love Old School Shit and What Would You Do. Those diss tracks even go harder for me than Real Compton City G's. And if you look at the music video part of it, Eazy-E reached out to the actual guy that played him in the Dr. Dre Day video and managed to flip that around and say, hey, look, I can get the same guy you got for your video and we're going to chase him down, we're going to clown him, and I'm going to show you who the real G is, which was dope to me. That's something that most artists can't pull off and kind of flip everything around on the other person that's dissing them. That's the main part of diss tracks. If you can kind of get what they said about you and flip it on them in terms of financially, business, anything, music video wise, track wise, credibility wise, all that, to me, you're the winner. So I give Eazy-E, the battle portion of it. And that's it for this episode of Who Really Won, Dr. Dre versus Eazy-E. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I got quite a few episodes in the works right now that are coming. I know the series has been on hold, but I'm going to try to release a lot more episodes now that I have a video editor. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Dr. Dre or Eazy-E, who do you got in this battle? With that being said, thank you for watching the video. That's it for today's video. If you guys want to support this channel further, you can do so at patreon.com/diverse mentality. For just $1 a month or more, you can help support this channel further. A link is in the description below. Like, comment, share, and definitely subscribe. I do videos like this daily on hip-hop news and much more, so definitely subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at QuakeGW. Like us on Facebook, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.